Daniel Calder, broadband advocate for the Iowa Communications Alliance, bringing you a legislative update from the Capitol. I do have to apologize. It's a busy day here in the Capitol, and so there might be a little bit of background noise. I do apologize if that comes through on my recording, but I'm going to try to speak up so that I can turn down the volume if need be. I want to start today by talking a little bit about where session is right now. There is a tonal shift in the Capitol away from kind of the friendliness, sort of new beginning of school year jitters, and we're kind of altering into a stage of conflict where people don't always get along as well. Every bill, every idea that runs through the Capitol has a person behind it. Now, when that bill does not sort of reach the end, there is sometimes some animosity behind that, but usually there's a person that sort of said, I think that's a bad idea, and so those two people can potentially be in conflict. Additionally, throughout this, there hasn't really been a lot of progress, but this has been the first week where a lot of bills have either gone through committee or gone through subcommittee and sort of received those amendments or failed to advance or advanced over someone's objection. And I don't want to be too cynical, but I do want you to know that this is sort of the time of legislative session where legislators in particular, and sometimes even lobbyists, are kind of tense. So if you do come to the Capitol, just be aware that not everyone is quite as friendly as you might remember them outside of the legislative session. And I do want to mention that not every bill that moves through the subcommittee process is a viable proposal. There are lobbyists in the Capitol that try to put things to bed for a lot of reasons. So please do know that even if a bill I announce is going through the process, know that it may not be going through the process permanently. And of course, you can always count on me to give you an update or reach out to me via email if you have any questions. I always welcome those. Jumping though right into policy, we did interact with two different bills of the same topic, House Study Bill 635 and Senate Study Bill 3013. Both deal with the regulation of artificial intelligence. Now, the purpose of these bills is actually a really great place. It's to protect Iowans' intellectual property. The proponents of the bill say that Iowans have a lot of great ideas and that when they interact with artificial intelligence, those train artificial intelligence models. Those models are largely owned by states on the coast like California, and so they want to put some protections in place that say that if an Iowan trains a AI model, what comes out of that AI model still belongs to Iowans, providing that intellectual property check. The bill, technically speaking, provides ownership of AI outputs based on the user's inputs, and it provides some definitions within that. And I want to make sure that I mention that at this subcommittee, the Department of Management jumped in and provided a commentary that we have not seen before. The reason that ICA is following this legislation is how it interacts with federal funding, and specifically the National Telecommunications Information Agency has stated that states that regulate AI, a executive order directed NTIA to state that states that regulate AI will not be eligible for BEAD non-deployment funds. Now in Iowa, that's to the tune of about $211 million, and I want to additionally mention that how that money gets spent is not necessarily clear. Obviously, ICA interacts a lot with the Broadband Equity Access Deployment Program. We were certainly heavy proponents of funding ICA and community-based broadband providers, and so how this money gets spent also matters very deeply. But at subcommittee, the Department of Management stated that they believe that this legislation will run afoul of the executive order that states that we should not have a patchwork of AI regulations. And so if this legislation gets signed into law, they believe that it would prevent Iowa from collecting about $200 million or collecting and spending about $200 million in non-deployment dollars. I do want to quote Representative Sorensen, who is the chair of the subcommittee, is also the chair of House Technology Committee. He said he's under no illusion that the governor would actually sign a piece of legislation into law that would prevent Iowa from deploying $200 million of broadband dollars. I do want to make sure I mention that this bill sort of was taken out of that theoretical impact and into the consequential impact with that Department of Management comment, and this is the first time we've heard them comment on something such as this. They often try to keep in the abstract. So I do think it's important that we start tracking the Department of Management's work on non-deployment dollars as well because of how this bill impacts that. There was also a bill that I want to discuss, and that is Senate File 578, and this is the financial disclosure requirements for utility cooperatives. Now, if you remember from last year, Senate File 578 was a bill that we worked on for quite a bit of session. It survived the first funnel, but was never passed out of the Senate. SF 578, by matter of procedure, was actually assigned a new subcommittee this year, and that subcommittee was held this week. If you remember your Iowa civics lesson, we are in the second session of the 91st General Assembly. When a bill is introduced in the first session and it fails to pass into law, it becomes active by a matter of procedure for the second General Assembly. And we saw that happen this week. I do want to mention that this bill would require a cooperative that provides utility services to provide to its member financial disclosures upon request. This is kind of ambiguous. It doesn't define what financial disclosure is, and we all know that in the broadband and the telecommunications sphere, we are in a very competitive environment. Financial disclosure in a broad sense could provide a competitive disadvantage for utilities that are co-ops. And for that purpose, we are opposed to this legislation. Now, this bill did advance through subcommittee, and we do believe it will advance through committee. However, we don't believe that this bill is technically viable in the broader sense, so we're not really making a lot of to-do about it. I do want you to know that if Senate File 578 seems concerning to you, to let me know. We are on top of it already, and we are going to certainly make sure this bill is either amended to be narrowly tailored to the introducer's intent, which is not broadband companies. But if that doesn't happen, we're going to make sure the bill does not get across the finish line, and I do think that we have a very good a chance of making sure that that happens. So I just reiterate before I adjourn that there are a lot of ideas moving, and not all of them are created equally. Here at ICA, we follow, I believe it's more than 600, maybe more than 700 bills so far at this point. And so if you have a question about a piece of legislation, please let me know. I'd love to comment on what we think of it, what we think of the chances of the bill going, because not everything is a serious threat, even though it does seem sort of threatening on paper. So we have 2 more weeks after today for the legislative funnel, and we hope that you have a good day, that you've been following along. Thank you very much.